Alright, and so in this video we'll start talking about condensation. Now I understand that for most of you guys that must be nothing new, and I will not be teaching anything. I really don't know who's gonna be watching this video actually, but I think what I'm gonna explain is nothing new, nothing exceptional. You can find better explanations pretty much maybe anywhere, and you probably already know about this anyways. But I'm making this video because two of my friends asked me how does condensation work, or like how does it happen, kind of. And to one, because we were having a beer and there was condensation on the glass because it was cold. And essentially what happened is that to one of my friends I gave him a really shitty explanation. Not only was I tired, a bit drunk, though also was not prepared. And I mean, it's kind of embarrassing to give a shitty explanation to such a simple concept. And also to the other friend, well, actually I didn't even have time to finish explaining what I wanted to explain. So I'll just take the time to give a more, thought explanation of how condensation works. So this explanation I'm gonna give pretty much works for any compound, not only water, but I'll be using water as an example because I find it's more intuitive. Also, here I will be talking about liquid condensation and not about solid condensation, but yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. There's no really a big difference between one or the other. So anyways, so essentially what makes condensation happen is that at any given temperature, there's a gas can only have a max. Sorry, how could I explain? At any given temperature, there is a maximum pressure at which a gas can reach. To understand this, you have to understand that pressure and temperature have opposite effects on the gas. So while the temperature is a measure that measures how much collisions and the frequency of these collisions happen amongst the molecules in the gas and how fast they travel, thus meaning that it's something that makes the molecules to tend to spread out. Pressure does the opposite thing. Pressure, what it does is it tries to compress those molecules and tries to keep them together. So what happens is that and so that's why there is a maximum pressure that a gas can reach at a given temperature, and that pressure is called the saturation pressure. If the gas reaches a pressure superior to the saturation pressure, what will happen is that its temperature doesn't provide enough kinetic energy to keep it in a gaseous state. So what it will have to be able to maintain itself in a gaseous state, so to maintain itself in a gas state, will have to do is that it will have to start condensating. So essentially, some of the molecules in the gas phase will have to go to a liquid phase or a solid phase in the case of solid condensation. And by reducing the amount of molecules in the gas phase, the pressure will decrease, and therefore the gas will be able to remain in the gas form with the energy it has from its temperature. So in other words, if you have a gas at a certain pressure and a certain temperature, if the pressure is raised above the saturation pressure, some of the gas will condensate to bring the pressure back to its saturation pressure or below it. And likewise, what happens is that you have a gas at a certain pressure and you keep that pressure constant, and then you decrease its temperature to the point that it's at a to the point that you decrease its temperature to the point that its pressure is superior to the new saturation pressure. Then again, part of the gas will condensate in order to keep it at the saturation pressure or below. So that latter example is pretty much what happens when there is condensation on a cold beer glass. For instance, let's say your beer glass is at 5 degrees Celsius, and let's say because of the moisture in air, the partial pressure of water in air is, I'm just giving an example here, is 1000 pascals, where, well, at 5 degrees Celsius, in the air at, let's say, 20 degrees Celsius, the saturation pressure is way above 1000 pascals, so that water can remain in its vapor form, and that's fine. But the problem is that once the vapor in the air touches the glass and it turns to 5 degrees Celsius. Well, at 5 degrees Celsius, the saturation pressure of water is 800 pascals. So it's below the so the pressure at what it is. So the partial pressure of water, which, as I said, was 1,000 pascals, is above the saturation pressure. So some of the water will condensate. That is pretty much a simplified and the way to explain it. Actually, there will be other factors to be taken into account, but it's really not necessary for the sake of the explanation. It's pretty much that happens. The other things that will happen too is that since the vapor will cool when touching the cold surface, its pressure will kind of reduce by itself without needing to condensate, but it will only be reduced by a little bit. It will really need some help from condensation. But as I said, that's just another factor. Another factor that could be taken into account is that the temperature around it might kind of raise a little bit. What happens is that when a liquid, mostly with water, but this actually applies to any liquid, when it condensates, it releases the energy it had. It's what it's called. It's latent heat, which is essentially the energy that was necessary to take it from liquid phase to gas phase. When it goes the other way around, it will release that energy. And in some liquids, as I said, such as water, that amount of energy can be quite significant. It can raise the temperature around it. But then again, as I said, this is one of the factors that might also be necessary to be taken into account. But it's less predictable, because you never know where that energy is going to go. Will it go to the liquid phase? Will it go to the gas phase? Will it go to the solid phase, which in this case would be the glass? Will be spread out. You can't really tell, right? So it's not as simple. So that's why I didn't consider those factors in my explanation. I just try to keep it as simple as possible. Anyway, so this is the end of the video, and goodbye.